like a lot of ups and downs, and there's obviously obvious concerns with him, but you're looking at it in like, okay, I saw what he did in 2023. He had an incredible season. 2024 he's a little more down. It's a little more down, but he's playing in an easier conference, objectively an easier conference against objectively easier opponents. Can he put up better numbers because he's in the ACC? If he can, incredible. It'd be a great season for him. It'd be a season that will probably lead us to the CFP if he's somewhere along that 2023 mark. And I'm wondering, Shay, do you think that he can get to that 2023 mark?
I think it's doable. I think it is very doable. Like you look at what he was able. I mean, you look at what Miami has around him. I get the receiver problem. The receiver is probably very comparable to what he had that last year at Georgia, given the fact that it's a lot of improving guys, a lot of guys you're hoping steps up, not necessarily proven guys. Like he's not coming into a system where where Miami had Restrepo. You have Sam Brown, you have Jacoby George, guys who like have proven themselves to a little bit of extent. And then the guy like who came out of nowhere, Elijah Royal last year. But what he does have is a very standout offensive line. Probably, if you're looking at the ACC in itself, probably the best in the conference from that standpoint. One of the best in the country from an offensive line standpoint, and a running game that you think you are projecting a little bit, like you are projecting that Fletcher and Lyle can take up bigger roles, but given what we've seen them that they can do, those are guys that you think can really have a stable running game that kind of allow Carson Beck to have play action, have more time to develop have routes develop and stuff like that. So, and especially given what Shannon Dawson did for Cam Ward last year, as with the offense, calling this offense, leading this offense, getting aggressive when getting sometimes a little too aggressive at times, but overall, manning the ship from an offensive standpoint at a very high level. Like you think there's a lot of things that this offense can do to kind of help support Carson Beck and not make him into what he's not. Like he's not Cam Ward, but I think he's obviously not going to be Cam Ward. He's not going to run around and improvise a bunch. But what he can do is really sit in the pocket, pick you apart piece by piece, stay on time, stay on rhythm, hit the big play when you need him to. And I think Miami can definitely get that out of him and get something similar to what he had that year, 2023. And I think much better than what he did in 2024. Because obviously we said the numbers, 28-12. You're like, that's not that bad, but it's just in moments really. You didn't see what a guy. You didn't see the flashes of what people considered to be a potential first overall pick. Like he entered 2024 as the by far I think the consensus number one overall pick. And then through the struggles last year, especially down the stretch and getting injured at the end of last year, you look at all those type of things and it kind of tanked his draft stock. So, and you actually look at it like he declared for the draft, and saw there wasn't a lot of interest, and that's why he ended up at Miami. And I think the confidence in Miami's program is another, like they have the confidence that, to look at what you did last season, see the dwindling interest from the NFL and be like, this is where I want to go from a program standpoint, I think is another good thing for Miami. Like a guy thinks he can come here and become a number one overall pick again. Maybe not necessarily. It's tough. This draft class is probably going to be a lot better than last year's. But overall, like I really think Miami can help him get back to where he was in 2023 and get maybe not necessarily be a number one overall pick, but a potential first round pick.
Yeah, I do have a little concern though with the talent that will be like, not considering the talent that Miami has isn't good. It's great. The O-line's fantastic. But the talent that he had on that 2023 team, his best year, had Ladd McConkey, Chargers, incredible player for the Chargers right now. You have Brock Bowers, the offensive rookie of the year, probably the best tight end in the league, right? Playing at the best tight end in the league right now. And he had Kendall Milton, who's a current running back for the Bengals. And you had a couple of linemen that are currently in the league right now. So that's like 5 NFL ready guys. And that's guys that like they really contributed to what made Carson Beck had a fantastic season. 2024, from what I'm seeing, I only know a couple of guys, Trevor Etienne, who had a really bad year last year, and Arian Smith from the who's on the Jets right now. Those are the only 2 guys I know of from that draft class last season that are on the, that are in the league. That's not nearly as good, and it could have played a role in Carson Beck's regression potentially. So you're hoping that maybe Miami has a similar group of guys that they had last season, like that they had in 2023. Maybe if they have that kind of, if Elijah Arroyo can play a role similar to Brock Bowers, he will not be Brock Bowers. I'm not saying that. If he can play a similar role to him, if CJ Daniels can step up to a role where he can be similar to Lavin Conkey, not saying he will be, and then the running back group I believe can be Kendall Milton. If they and the O line can be those guys. So it's up to the receivers and the tight end group. Can they help Carson Beck the way that Carson Beck then can help them? Because we've seen when Carson Beck has the talent around him, he can be a very good player. If he doesn't have talent around him, a lot more shakier, can throw more picks. There's definitely more concern there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, especially like you see this constantly with guys who are very reliant on being on schedule in a rhythm running the offense through the pocket is like if they're off schedule because guys aren't where they need to be, guys are getting jammed up and can't get into their routes necessarily. And that can cause a lot of problems for a guy like Carson Beck. So I think a lot of it will have to be on Shannon Dawson to kind of scheme guys open, get Carson Beck in a rhythm, and help this offense move early on. And then, once he's in a rhythm, then you can kind of go, then you can maybe take more shots, a lot more like complicated concepts, stuff that's going to take longer to develop. Because you just want to get him in a rhythm, especially early on in the season, to kind of set the tone for what this year is going to be. Like I think you don't want it to be the year of Tyler Van Dyke, that last year where it was just Miami got ultra conservative with what their offense is going to be, and there were times. I mean, we're talking about him later too, but when Emory Williams is sometimes the QB, where the Miami gets really conservative, and it's just check downs, bubble screens a million times, and then it's very, not necessarily you have to be fun to watch all the time, but it's very rough to watch when it looks like you don't really believe in your quarterback to that level. And I think Miami can really help Carson. I think Shannon Dawson was really going to be the key factor in helping these new moving pieces kind of come together alongside Carson Beck to give him a much better chance of succeeding than he did last year in Georgia. I think all the receivers are going to have to do their own part because, like, you mentioned a guy like Arian Smith, a million drops last year. That's why he fell despite the crazy speed he has. So I think guys being reliable and being consistent is going to be very important. But I think most importantly, it's Shannon Dawson moving these chess pieces around to their best ability. That's going to be so critical for Miami.
Yeah, and when we talk about, I mean, you're right that we're right now we need Carson Beck as probably another big concern is him to stay healthy. I know that his UCL injury was kind of a freak injury, but you need him to stay healthy. And I say you need him to stay healthy because you're concerned or you have issues or we have worries with the rest of the quarterback room, especially the battle for QB2 with Emory Williams probably leading the charge right now, the redshirt sophomore. Great dude. Love Emory Williams. His true freshman season, he had to come in after the Tyler Van Dyke injury and then him, I wouldn't call it a benching, but you could call it a benching, where he had to come in against Clemson when Van Dyke was hurt. He got the start. He goes 24 of 33, one touchdown, one interception, 151 yards. They won that game 28-20 in a double overtime victory. But if you watch that game, as we mentioned earlier, Shannon Dawson did not rely he didn't really give Emory Williams the keys at all. He gave him the training wheels at best. He was throw a lot of short passes, a lot of quick throws, nothing. He was never going to try to make a deep ball throw to try to get a big play touchdown. He was never going for that. He never tried it. Just never happened. And it was scary. It was not fun watching him play against Clemson because you were a little worried if he does throw a deep ball, will he just throw a pick? You were worried about some of those things in that game. They ended up winning that game. Would have probably been one of my favorite games that Miami had won. And then against FSU, number 4 team in the country, really tough game in Tallahassee. 8 of 23, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. One of those touchdowns was that play to Jacoby George. Probably should have been a pick, but it wasn't. Counts as a touchdown. And I'll give him credit that he did make the incredible play, diving to get that first down, breaking his arm. That's true grit right there. Absolute dog for making that play and getting the first down. Probably made my FSU play its toughest game all season long with that dive and that attempt in that game. Yeah, the 8 completions was really bad. He was pretty bad in that game. The defense kind of kept them in for the most part. So you're looking at Emory Williams. You're like, okay, can 2024, maybe he takes a little, maybe he can develop a little bit, take a little step forward. He backed up Cam all season long, and then he played the entire second half of the Pop-Tart Bowl, gave Mario and Shannon Dawson, like, okay, this is who we got going forward. Let's see what he's got. He went 5 of 14 for 26 yards and a pick. It was there was no doubt about it, other than saying it was one of the worst performances you'll see in a game from a quarterback. It was bad. It was bad. It gave Miami the reason to enter the portal and say, okay, now we need a quarterback. And they attempt for here and they attempt for all these guys and they get Carson Beck. They had to do that because of what they saw from Emory Williams in the Pop-Tart Bowl. It was bad. It was nothing short of like one of the worst performances I've seen in a while. So you're hoping that 2025 Emory is continuing his development, that he's able to, do better when he's under pressure, that he's able to do things other than short passes, that he maybe can show off whatever arm talent he has. Maybe he can, you're hoping that in the event that Miami's blowing out a team, maybe you're looking at Emory and saying, okay, you play Bethune-Cookman. What are you going to do? Are you going to play a good game? Whatever. But you're saying, what if Carson Beck gets hurt? Can this guy really step up and be a legitimate player in an ACC game against, I don't know, Louisville, Virginia Tech? Can he be one of those guys? And that's where you're starting to say, okay, I have a little bit more concern of this guy. I have a little bit more that we have to trust in the running back group significantly more. We have to trust in the defense significantly more. That's my concern with Emory Williams. I know some people are still high on him. I think he's a great dude, but I don't know. I have a little more. Well, I'm very hesitant on saying that Emory Williams will automatically be the QB2, will be a guy that can easily fill in for Carson Beck if he were to go down.
Yeah, there is that necessarily where you are concerned, but I think if him as a spot starter role, I think has been, he does what he needs to do. I think he managed the game well. If you need to be conservative, it does that, and especially if Miami's defense is a lot better this year, like that's something that's serviceable for maybe a game or maybe two, especially like in that middle of the season lull if you're playing a team like Stanford or if you're playing a team, one of the lower teams in the ACC, or if it's Bethune-Cookman you're necessarily playing, he's going up against. So those are the type of things, where I think Emory is very serviceable at. Like, obviously, I don't want him playing week 1 against Notre Dame, and obviously, if it's the ACC championship, I'd be worried about him going against a team like Clemson, stepping into that. But I think overall, looking at what he can do, I think he's a good backup, and I don't, unless it's like a very long stretch of time, I don't necessarily have too much of a worry about him being a starter. Like if Carson Beck is down for maybe a half or maybe a game necessarily, like I think he can definitely step into that type of role. It's just like those elongated stretches of him playing where you get a little bit concerned, where you get concerned for for what he can be as a starter. And I think especially you want him to be the backup, and you're rooting for him to be backup a little bit just because like you look at the depth of this QB room and it's a lot of guys you want to kind of keep redshirted. Not a lot. I mean, the main guy everybody talks about it is Luke Nickel. You want to make sure he's redshirted. Everything I've heard about him, everything I watched him a little bit in the spring game. He flashes, and you're like, okay, this guy could definitely step in as a starter. Maybe not. Maybe if Emory really does prove himself, whether it's not next year or the year after. So, like, I think I'm very fine with Miami's depth in this QB room as long as like you don't have to test it for long periods of time. Like I'm fine if it's just a game or two where guys have to start in the spot. But like long term, obviously, if Carson Beck was out for 5-6 games in the middle of the season, I'd be a little worried. But
Yeah, okay, that's fair. I guess that's fair. I just have some concern if that he has to play. Maybe Carson Beck goes down with some injury and Emory Williams is thrown into the fire against FSU. You're in Tallahassee again. I have a little concern that maybe he doesn't play to the level that you need him to, and he kind of falls back to what he did in the Pop-Tart Bowl or what he did last year against last year against FSU. So I just have a little bit more of that concern at times. Sorry, I'm looking at what
I know, me
Kendrick
too.
is saying
Yeah.
here. I haven't been to training camp practice yet. I will at hopefully in the next couple weeks. I have not heard this. I saw a couple clips of him a couple of days ago. I did not see any clips of him today. I actually didn't hear his name at all today. I'm not gonna throw in any rumors. I'm not gonna start any rumor mill at all. I'm hoping he's healthy. I did see a couple tweets about his potentially a knee. I'm not going to throw in any rumors if he's hurt or not. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, very fair. I was looking too. I didn't see anything confirmed yet. So,
Yeah.
if there's something there, I think we'll probably hear it. But as of right now, I think, there's a difference between guys being hurt and like injured. So like maybe if it's a little soreness or uncomfortability, then it's like, limit a guy for a practice necessarily. But I haven't seen anything to say that really concern me about his long
Yeah.
health going into.
The other thing I know, one thing is that Mario Cristobal is very specific about the clips that he has the media show. Maybe Mario was telling them not to show anything or not to, because I'm sure Mario would have been asked a question about his health. I'm sure he would have, if there was something to be concerned about. There's probably just a world where he didn't show up. Maybe he was just with the athletic trainers, or they weren't allowed to film Jojo Trader. That could also be a potential thing. That they're very specific about what you can and cannot film. So we don't know, and I'm not gonna try to speculate what's happening, if he's healthy, if he's not. You hope he really is, because he's gonna be a crucial part of this team this
Very
season.
crucial part. And kind of Falcon are kind of echoing our point going back to Carson Beck is in this depth. Yeah, this is what you hope. You hope that this is the main part you're going to see the depth of this QB room get tested. Thank you for 305, by the way. But defense is good. Beck is good throughout most of the game. And then that fourth quarter, send whoever you want in. Send Emery in for the quarter. Send Judd in for the quarter. Send Luke Nickel in for the quarter. And I think you're very fine with that. And another guy I'll mention just to kind of just look at the future of this QB room and maybe a guy who can look at coming in next year is Darion Coleman, 3-star out of Orlando. He's looked solid. I mean, I looked at some of his clips. The ball zips out of his hand. Like it literally is just a flick of the wrist, and that thing is going. So I think you could be excited about him. He's very small, only 6 foot. I think he's listed at 165 according to 24/7 currently. So a little bit of size concerns, but as a future depth piece or maybe potential starter one day, like the ball really, he does have a lot of juice in his arm. Like it is the arm's lively. So I think another guy to potentially get excited about moving on to the future, even if Emery or Luke Nickel isn't the necessary answer. I think Miami is going to. I mean, you're always going to look at QBs in the future, and I think there's always the world that Miami does explore the transfer route again. I mean, it's been success. If it's successful 2 years in a row, there is always a chance that Miami does it a third year and then gets another highly touted transfer recruit like they've done the last 2 years. So there's a lot to look at with this QB room and a lot to be concerned about. I will be fair in the case of Carson Beck is injured, which doesn't look like it, but if there's injury concerns with this QB room and there's long-term the backups that play for more than one game, you're going to be concerned anyways. Because I think, anytime your starting QB gets hurt, the backup's a backup for a reason. So there's not a lot of teams who can go into a long stretch of games with their backup QB and, expect to succeed. And I don't think Miami's going to be any different than that. But I think in spots, I think Emery can play well. And I think in terms of the future, whether it's Luke Nickel, whether it is Emery, maybe he does actually prove himself to be the guy for the future. Or if it's a guy like Darion Coleman, I think I like this Miami QB room in terms of the depth behind it, just in case in a spot Carson Beck has to be out for whatever reason.
Yeah, there is also Judd Anderson, the redshirt freshman. The only thing, because I don't know much about him, I do know that he played in the wing T offense his freshman year of high school and then transferred to a different high school, this one in Georgia. He was a very good two-way athlete. He's also huge. He's 6'6".
I've heard about. Yeah, he is a big guy from what I've heard. So
yeah, so I don't know much about him as a player, but I do know that I don't know that I don't know, maybe he's another guy that you could be looking at and be like, oh, maybe the QB2 battles between Judd Anderson and Emory Williams. That could be a potential thing. I would say, you were talking about it, that the guy that what I'm hoping Miami can do is that they can develop Luke Nickel as the guy, that he could be the guy as for years to come. If he has a very good, and this might take a little bit, maybe you redshirt him this season, and then maybe he's developing under someone else next season. Then you're hoping his redshirt sophomore season he gets the keys. If that happens, I'm very interested to see what Luke Nickel can do. I'm very high on him. I thought he was fantastic in high school. Watching his clips, and I think he's got the potential to be a very good player. So you have I think it's a good quarterback room. I think it's a fine quarterback room. But if Carson Beck were to go down, there could be concerns. If he were to go down for a large portion of the season, I have significantly even more concerns. But at this point, who doesn't? Right?
Yeah,
If Cade Klubnik were to go down for Clemson, Clemson fans would be saying their season's over. So it's no
exactly.
different from Miami that if Carson Beck were to go down, you would be saying your season doesn't look like a CFB season, that it looks like just a regular 7-5, 8-4 bowl game season.
And then even if it was the case, I think there is the hope that if you knock on wood, like obviously you don't want anybody to get hurt, but is in any case like that, it is a kind of a learning season at that point where you'd hate for it to go that way for Miami, but like you can learn about the depth of this QB room. So I think either way you look at it, there always is a bright side to things. But obviously the hope is, and I think the expectation is for Carson Beck to be healthy. But if there are some complications there, you do get to test out this depth in QB room and the potential future of it after this year.